Welcome to the Sum of Everything podcast, where we discuss a little bit of a lot of topics, ranging from spirituality to finance and everything in between. I'm your host, Aishwarya, a serial hobbyist with an unquenchable thirst for learning, especially through new experiences. In this podcast, we will scratch every itch of curiosity, explore various perspectives, step out of our comfort zone, and experience some of everything. Because after all, we are just that, a sum of all our experiences. So let's dive right in. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Sum of Everything podcast. I am Aishwarya, your host, and if you are here after last week's episode, which was my first ever episode, then I owe you a very huge thank you, and I am so grateful for the support and I really appreciate it. I hope you liked last week's episode, because this time I'm going to be talking about something in continuation from last week's episode. Now, last week we talked about comfort and needing to make ourselves uncomfortable to see any sort of growth or change. And I spoke about bringing about a change internally by making yourself uncomfortable. This week, I'd like to talk about external change. So, some time ago, I was talking to a friend of mine and I was trying to schedule my day. I was looking at a very busy day, extremely hectic, and I was feeling a little overwhelmed with how I was going to plan the rest of my day and how I was going to get all of my work done. And my friend suggested that I use AI scheduling tools to sort out my day and prioritize my to-do list, to which I admitted to him with some embarrassment that I had not yet explored ChatGPT because I was not an early adopter or even a mid adopter of new technology. You know, early adapters being people who take on new technology as and when it comes because they're curious and they want to learn more about it. And also are generally good with tech because they understand it and it comes more intuitively to them. I am definitely not one of those people. At the same time that this conversation was going on, I was having a conversation separately with my grandfather regarding an issue he was facing with his phone after a software update about having to fix some of his settings. And he insisted that I send him step-by-step instructions, preferably with screenshots, so he could make the change on his own instead of having somebody else younger and somebody who is well-versed with mobile phone technology to fix the issue that he was facing. Now, the irony of this was not lost on me because here I am, not even 30, complaining about new technology, and my octogenarian grandfather was persistently and adamantly learning all that he could in his quest to keep up with the changing times. Now, that's when I realized, that learning, adapting, and growing, it's a constant cycle. And if we try to stand our ground, the chances are that we will likely lose sight of where we fit in the world. Isn't that our major complaint from people who precede us or who are elder, that they're not keeping up with the times? They're so stuck and stubborn about the times that they grew up in or the experiences that they had when they were growing up that they just don't care to see that the world has changed around them and that they should change as well. But that's the truth of the matter, isn't it? The world around us will keep changing. The question is, do we want to keep up, or are we okay with being left behind and becoming irrelevant? Now, I'm not saying that we should keep up and change things just because trends are changing all the time. I understand that trend is something that you might not want to keep up. But if something is here to stay, then maybe it's in our best interest to learn about it, to understand it, even if we don't necessarily adopt it. But knowing is very important for us to stay relevant. Don't hustle for hustle's sake, but at least be aware of the changes that are happening. And the more you make it a habit when you are young and capable of adapting faster, the easier old age will become. That's just my view. For instance, mm, my grandmother does not even fully understand how to use a phone. How long has it been since smartphones became an everyday, almost irreplaceable part of our lives? We can't do without smartphones anymore. But my grandmother refuses to learn how to use one. In stark contrast to this, another elder in my family demanded that when the rest of the household moved from push button phones to touchscreen smartphones, she insisted that she be given one as well so she could keep in touch with her friends and relatives over WhatsApp and video calls. She wanted that change and she wanted to learn and she wanted to stay true to the times so she could stay relevant. Otherwise, how difficult is it to explain to somebody that, oh, this is how you make a video call and this is how you change the settings and this is how you go to WhatsApp, look up a chat, and this is how you make a video call on this app. And the key thing here is you can refuse to change. You can, of course, choose to be who you are and be true to yourself and your times and be in the good old days. All of that is well and good. But seeing the rest of the world race ahead when you can't keep up makes you resentful. And that's exactly what I've seen happening in a lot of people's lives. It's easy to become bitter when you're out of touch with how exponentially fast the world is growing. And let's face it, it's ridiculous how fast the world is moving ahead. It's difficult to keep up for even someone like me. For instance, if you look at Instagram or TikTok, I'm sure you're finding reels or shorts or something like that say, like, I'm sure you've come across Gen Z complaining about how they've become dated because Gen Alpha has already started using these apps and they've come up with their own lingo. How many of you are millennials who've really looked at Gen Z and the lingo they use and the kind of words they use and been thoroughly confused because you just don't know or understand what is being talked about? I'm definitely in that category because I have to very commonly and very often look up meanings of short forms like ISTG and SMH. I had no idea they meant I swear to God or shake my head. This was Latin to me. And one really funny reel I remember is somebody admitting that hashtag IYKYK was something she read as yik yik yik. That was really funny. Hashtag, if you know, you know. But anyway, coming back, the key here is to adapt, right? We can't jump into a new environment overnight and become experts at it. We have to adapt, and it's a slow process. But here's what's working in favor of us. As a species, human beings are pretty resilient, and it's nearly the sole reason I think that we've survived so long in such a rapidly changing environment. Agreed, most of it is of our own making, but still, it's a rapidly changing environment and humans have kept up. So that means there's something going for us. We are a pretty tenacious species. So that's that. I mean, take a look at all the industrial revolutions that have happened, right? What are we in the fourth industrial revolution? The first one happened in the 1700s, if I'm not wrong, 17 or 1800s. It was the mechanization. Then we came to the electrification of processes, and then there was the digital revolution, and now we're in the cyber revolution. And what I am noticing is that the time period between each of these revolutions is becoming shorter and shorter, which means simply millennials have seen both the digital revolution as well as we are all now witnessing the cyber revolution. And that's crazy. That's really crazy because just think about even 90s kids, how much we have seen change. 90s kids were born in the early to mid 90s have literally gone from phones being attached to a wall to making video calls and being able to speak to people from across the world at the touch of a button. That's crazy. Who could have thought about that? TVs went from being huge as boxes to literally fitting in the size of our palms. What madness is that? That's literally a span of less than 40 years. 40, I'm pushing it, less than, like, nearly just about 30 years. We went from telephone, rotary phones to landline phones to pagers to mobile push button phones, and then that became Blackberries, and then touchscreen phones, and then computers, entire computer functions fitting in the palm of our hands. What crazy speed is that? And if you're not able to keep up with this speed of these changes, then who knows? Who knows what's going to come up in the next several years? Hopefully, if we're all really lucky, then we get to live for a long time and see more revolutions come in. But what's the point if we don't keep up? And that's why adaptation is crucial. We have to change with the times. And once again, adaptation is change, and change means discomfort. And yes, it does get harder with age, but isn't that the chief complaint that most of the generations have with generations that preceded them? They aren't keeping up. Times have changed. How many of you have said that to your parents? I know I have tried to explain to my parents in my quote unquote infinite wisdom that you're not keeping up with the times and you have to understand that this is how things are. But that is the truth of the matter. We have to keep up. So what is it that you've been avoiding because it's too hard to change? What is it that, have you tried ChatGPT? Is there something that you've not been up leveling or upskilling because it's way too hard and you know you have to do it, but you're procrastinating to the last possible minute because it's a lot of effort? This puts me back to the first one. Let's not get comfortable where we are, because comfort is a dangerous word, remember? We have to adapt. We have to change. We have to grow. It's the only way we stay relevant. Well, that's all for this one, and I hope you liked it. And if it doesn't come in handy right away, I hope it gets tucked away in some corner of your brain for you to use later. That's all for this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.